Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 21st Township Committee meeting. We will now salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United
States of America
and to the
republic
which stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
Thank you. Before we get started, I want to have a couple of moments of silence for two great members of our community that passed away since we last met. The first is Susan Joseph. Susan has been a member of our community for many, many years. She served as a district leader with the Maplewood Democratic Committee. She also served on our Transportation Advisory Committee and also our Affordable Housing Board. She was a regular for many years at many township committee meetings, and in her community of Gulf Island, she was a staple and loved by many. So we just want to recognize Susan. We're sorry that she is no longer with us as she passed away of COVID-19. I also want to recognize Bob Dulogos, who was our photographer, and he also was a staple of our community. Anyone who's been to our volunteer dinner over the years has always saw Bob there with his camera, ready to go. He was a resident of Maplewood for 70 years, so he's seen a lot, and he also captured a lot. He was a firefighter here in the Maplewood Fire Department from 1967 to 1994, but he was most honored when we decided to make him the township photographer. For him, holding that title was a great esteem, and he's taken many amazing pictures of all of us who are on this call and many who have served this township committee through the years. So now I'd just like to have a moment of silence for Susan and for Bob. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is the state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building. By mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2020 into the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2019, and by filing said notice in the office of the township clerk.
Adams. Here. Daffis.
Here.
Mr. DeLuca.
Here.
Lambert.
Here.
Mayor McGeehee.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas it's the desire of the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time it conducts its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except to set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation, the actions, and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGeehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritson. I'll now run through our agenda for this evening. We have two proclamations on the agenda. The first one is for Earth Day, and the second proclamation, which Earth Day is tomorrow, by the way, and the second proclamation is for Arbor Day. We will then have our first public comment on agenda items only, and Mr. Waltz will be in charge of that. And then we have a couple of ordinances on final passage. Our first ordinance is related to a bonding for our various capital improvements. Then our next ordinance is for bonding for our sewer improvements. After that, we'll go into reports from departments, and then we'll have our administrative reports from Ms. Viveros, Ms. Fritson, and our attorney, Mr. Desiderio. After that, we'll hear from our elected officials and hear their reports. Tonight, we have 4 discussion items. The first one is the review of the Township Committee meeting schedule for June and July because of the election shift. The second is a discussion on various activities that relate to our summer, the 4th of July, our pool season, and summer camps. The third item of discussion is a letter to support House Bill 6467, which relates to financial assistance to local governments with populations before 500,000, which obviously is us. The fourth and final discussion item will be our discussion and also the report from our Finance Committee. After that, we will go into our consent agenda. We have a total of 12 items on the agenda this evening. They include rejecting bids for our ADA improvements at various locations, appointing 2 new police officers, the awarding of a contract for renovations to the DPW building, the authorization of a change order for architectural design services for the restoration of Town Hall, the approving of emergency temporary appropriations, the authorizing of the tax collector to process third quarter estimated tax bills due August 1st of this year, the authorizing the acceptance of partial tax and sewer payments. We'll talk a little more about that in our Finance Committee discussion. Bills and claims, and then authorization for a change order for the restoration of our Town Hall front walkway. We'll then also have a contract awarded for the fuel station at DPW, including the demolition of that, approval of our regular session minutes, and then the approval of our closed session minutes. After that, we'll have our second and final public comment on all items, and then we will adjourn. So with that being said, Mr. DeLuca, would you like to read the proclamation for Earth Day?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the 50th year of Earth Day, and it's a special time, and clearly our planet is under attack, so we want to make sure that this is a special day. So here's a proclamation. Whereas all species play a unique role in the complex web of life and contribute to the ecosystem services on which all life on Earth depends, and protecting our species is crucial to the survival of this planet and its inhabitants. And whereas the loss of species is for the most part a result of human activity, including degradation of ecosystems, deforestation, pollution, and climate change. And whereas by 2050, between 60 to 70% of all people will live in cities, and species provide important services to city dwellers, such as generating oxygen and purifying the air, controlling other animals, and that are considered pests or that spread disease, polluting plants and crops, providing recreational opportunities and well-being. And whereas it is essential to expand and diversify the global environmental movement to achieve maximum progress, and whereas Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for environmental activism and stewardship commitments and sustainability efforts, now therefore, on behalf of Frank McGehee, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, and the Maplewood Township Committee, I do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2020 as Earth Day in the Township of Maplewood. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Earth Day and to support efforts to protect our species and ecosystem, and further encourage all of our citizens, businesses, and institutions to use Earth Day to celebrate the Earth and promote the protection of our species.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We will now have our second proclamation for Arbor Day by Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our township increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Adams, on behalf of Mayor McGehee and the rest of the Township Committee, do hereby proclaim April 24th as Arbor Day in the Township of Maplewood. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Further, I urge all citizens to plant and care for trees, to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We are now at agenda item number 7, which is public comment on agenda items only. Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who has provided public comment?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, you have no public comment.
Thank you. We're now moving on to agenda item number 8, an ordinance on final passage.
Mayor, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2995-20. Bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $6,170,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $5,892,000 in bonds or notes to the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance to law. Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who would like to speak or comment on this ordinance?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing or hearing no one, may we have a motion, Mr. DeLuca?
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Mr. Dappis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Lembrick? Mr. Lembrick?
Sorry, yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have our second ordinance on final passage.
Mayor, item number 9, ordinance number 2996-20, bond ordinance providing for various sewer improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $1,417,500 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,346,625 in bonds or notes to the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance to law. Mr. Wallace, do we have anyone who would like to comment on this ordinance regarding bonding related to sewer repair?
No, sir.
Hearing no one, we will close the public hearing. May I receive a motion, Mr. DeLuca?
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion?
Mayor, if I just can say this is for us to do some extensive work on our sanitary sewer system. We have a pretty significant problem on Boyden Avenue, and we even have a temporary, an emergency repair that we're doing also. So we're trying to keep up our infrastructure, and this is, in a way, we're doing it responsibly, making sure we're planning for the future.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. I think that's a very fair point, that we're at a point now where we have to prepare for now and for the future, and this is something that we can't, push off or defer. So thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you.
We're on agenda item number 10, reports from departments. I'm not sure if we have any reports. I know that we're going to discuss the Finance Committee report as a discussion item. So, Mr. Kaloje, if you do not want to give a report at this time, we can put that in the discussion. It's your choice.
I think the discussion would be more appropriate, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Viveros, do we have any other reports that we should be aware of from department heads?
I do not at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, administrative reports. So nice segue. Ms. Viveros, you have the floor.
I just wanted to update everybody with regard to township operations. We continue to operate as an essential part of government. We are working on skeleton crews. Just as an update also, we've been working on getting additional masks on our own, and we were successful in obtaining 1,295 masks from a vendor with a good turnaround of 2 days. Everyone really has been operating as best as possible during these conditions. I can't say enough about the way our EMS has been operating and our police. So I applaud all of the first responders. Additionally, the DPW who continue to maintain our operations throughout all of our buildings. We are doing our best to hang in there and continue to serve the residents of Maplewood.
Thank you, Ms. Viveros. Any questions for Ms. Viveros?
Yes, Mayor, I do.
Ms. Adams?
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification for the public with regard to contractors, permitting, inspections, what's considered essential construction and what's not. And if that's, and I think this information needs to get out because I've been getting questions and emails and calls from people who are doing projects and then finding out they can't get a permit or they can't get an inspection. So I don't know how well that's been communicated to the public. So I'm wondering if you don't have the answer to what's essential, which you probably don't because I didn't talk to you about this before. But I did talk with Mr. Palma about it earlier today. And she clarified some things for me, but I think we need to get some of that information out to the public. Many people had projects underway and then they were stalled because they weren't considered essential. So I think there needs to be some clarification for the public and hoping that can happen.
So we could do that. I understand we've gotten a lot of questions about continued construction, new projects. So we could elaborate on the executive order and what it outlines there and some of the answers we've actually inquired with DCA provided to us. So we'll come up with a bullet point of scenarios and what is actually essential, what we're gonna, how we're gonna get that out to the public. So we'll do that this week. We'll get that out this week.
Okay, thank you. I also had complaints from people with regard to contractors that is considered essential service, which is landscapers with the lack of physical distancing that the crews are doing among themselves without protective masks. And I'm not talking about the masks that or the protective equipment for using landscaping equipment or leaf blowers in particular, but rather, you know, five crew members get out of a truck and clearly they're not, you know, distanced in there and they're not wearing their masks while they're in there. So there's there's a lack of compliance with regard to
Mhm.
those crews. And I don't know if that's communication, if it's information, or if it's just they don't care, or, you know, what the situation is, but it's non-compliant with the
Mhm.
rules we're trying to follow.
From a clarification point on the executive orders, the official enforcers, if you will, are the police department. So if there is an issue, we are to call the non-emergency number to provide any such information. So I'll include that also in the e-blast about how to report something if there is if it's a non-compliance issue.
Yeah, because I have concerns about the protection of, I mean, the same reason we included protective equipment for breathing and hearing by the landscaping companies for those employees. I don't know that they understand that they all crowd into a truck together without masks, that they're endangering themselves and others.
Right. We've been addressing certain things of certain construction that's been happening and stopping this week, if they happen to be continuing. So we'll put something out to educate everyone on how we're dealing with it and how our department is dealing with it, and on a state level, how that's being dealt with. So,
Okay, and if you could also communicate, there might be another way to communicate that the contractors who do landscaping within the township are supposed to register with the town every year, and that's like now and
right.
before now, but I don't know that that's been followed up on with all that's been going on and the reorganization of the Department of Public Works with engineering. So could you please communicate that to
Yes.
Paul? Thank you.
Yes.
Because that could go out to a letter to the companies, a reminder that they need to register with the township, and
Okay.
then in that their employees should be practicing social distancing.
We'll do.
Thank you.
Ms. Viveros, with respect to the law enforcement directive to residents as it pertains to landscapers, can you make it clear when that communication goes out that this is while the state of emergency is in place, as per amended directive pre-COVID, where we all decided to direct residents to call code enforcement on law enforcement violations and not the non-emergency police number.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then one point that I would like to add to Ms. Adams' comments is that I think we also, as members of the community, households in the community, if you have land, if you have assigned or hired or contracted with a landscaping company, they come to your house, you're likely home these days, and you don't see them wearing masks, and you tell them to stop. You should ask them not to do your lawn until they're wearing proper masks and following the ordinance. That is, and if they don't have it, then they just have to come back the next day with the right equipment. But you know, if you have a contract as a homeowner with a landscaper who is not abiding by our ordinances, then you should also be respectful of our ordinance and make them stop doing that work until they follow our laws.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Any other questions for Ms. Viveros? Thank you. Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to report, since our next meeting, it is official that the June primary election is moved to Tuesday, July 7th. And that's where we stand right now as far as election goes. I guess it'll be a wait and see whether it is a vote by mail election or a true polling location election. And later on in the agenda, you do have a discussion item addressing the meeting that we had originally moved in June, conversation on that. Another official change that we've had is the ABC, or liquor license renewals for 2021, normally take place on or before June 30th. and they have also been moved to September 30th. So those are two important dates that have changed. Just standpoint of the township clerk's office and my staff, I want to say that I think that we are serving the residents of Maplewood, actually through online services, answering telephone inquiries, meet at the door to do simple things that they can't get done, like notary needs, because as we all know, many, if not all, of the banks' interiors are closed. So been doing that work as well. And again, I'm amazed at the open public records requests that are still coming in at a clip which is kind of normal. They are certainly not ceasing or reducing in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. And I also want to append to your report and to Mr. Rivera's report too. I want to recognize our health division as first responders and essential needs of our township. They are right now, on par with our fire and police by far, addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, excuse me. So I just want to recognize them and say, in my book, they're on the same line with police and fire and public works and should be recognized. So.
I agree, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Desiderio?
Good evening, Mayor. I just have one thing. On the agenda, your first consent agenda item is a rejection of bids for ADA improvement. I'd ask that you strike that out separately and vote on that separately, and that we ask if there are anyone who wants to speak to that. We had two bidders, and they both had to be rejected because they did not conform to the statutory requirements, and they do have a right to be heard, so I don't know if you'll hear anything. And the second thing is that after that, if we can get a motion to authorize rebidding for that project, so that the engineering department can go out and put those bids out again. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to make those motions at the appropriate time later in the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lindberg, and thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Duly noted.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Desiderio, I also wanted to point out that resolution number 9720 may require an amendment before we adopt it. The subject pertains to renovations to the DPW building, but I believe it has to do with the Civic House. Ms. Viveros, is that true?
Which number are we talking about? The architect?
9720.
9720, which is number 3 on the agenda, on the consent agenda.
I believe so. Why did they recall that?
It was DP. I thought it was the bathrooms. No, they're not doing the bathrooms.
No, that's included in the other bid for the fueling. We're containing the entire thing together. So I think there's just a title error here.
Right, because in the body it says to complete professional architectural design services for the Civic House building.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, it does.
So, Mr. Desiderio, can we adopt it with that edit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then we'll have, I did not draft that. That was drafted by engineering, but we'll have them make that correction, and then Ms. Fritzen will be able to keep it as a permanent record. But all we need to do is just, so maybe the easiest thing is to strike that one and deal with it separately as well.
Yep.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Lindberg, you want to take that one as well?
Sure.
Civic House. Okay, any more questions for Mr. Desiderio? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 12, reports from elected officials. Ms. Adams.
Oh, you always start with me. You gotta stop that. Yeah, I only have a couple of minor things. Just I have both environmental advisory and historic preservation meetings tomorrow night virtually at the same time almost. So I'm going to be hopping back and forth. I guess one of the advantages of virtual meeting. There's a lot being discussed with that, including the postponement of the SHPO, State Historic Preservation presentation with regard to designation of Maplewood Village. Yeah, all that. The other part of environmental advisory will be, I've been involved in a couple of Zoom meetings with regard to zero waste to continue the work from the workshop we did back in February, I think. I don't remember what day it is, so sometime. Seems like a year ago or so. But anyway, so we're following through and continuing, and the chair of engineering, environmental advisory has been working hard in gathering information. He may be reaching out to township department heads for our waste management information, so we can drill down on what exactly we're doing with regard to, and if we know what we have, we know what we want. One of the pieces of advice is to, since we've had trouble with recycling contractors, with getting bids for that, there's been some success with making those contracts a lot longer, so that you're more likely to get bids, which is something I don't think we've tried, at least not since I've been on the TC. So anyway, these are just things that we're mulling through and trying to get some guidance and a lot of expertise on the line in those things. So I'll be bringing more of that forward as we get into it more. Other than hoping everyone's still staying safe, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to report that I had the honor of spending some time last Thursday with a number of our first responders. I went to both of the firehouses in town, and also along with the mayor, visited police headquarters to talk to some of our firefighters, EMTs, and police officers who are on the front line. They are being very courageous in the face of this. They are seeing really the terrible impact that this virus is having, this plague is having on our community. Out on the calls, they're really seeing it, and they were able to share some of that with me, and it only raised my gratitude and appreciation to them for the service that they are doing for our community, and it sacrificed themselves and their families. I also know that a number of our employees in the township, in the police department, in the fire department, and in other departments, also have significant others or other family members who are also either first responders or working in hospitals or medical facilities right now. And we have a lot of heroes locally who are really coming through during this difficult time for our community. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge them. And one of the things that really struck me during my visit was a number of our firefighters and EMTs, who, as I said, do have significant others or family members working in hospitals right now, are actually starting a fundraising drive among their members and the FMBA union to raise money to help purchase needed supplies, and also to provide meals and other things to show appreciation to the workers at some of our local hospitals. And I've spoken with the mayor. We've pledged that the township will do whatever we can to promote their efforts and try to get them some support. That is really the extent of my report. I may chime in later on some of the discussion items, but everyone stay safe, and thanks for everyone for doing what you can, even if it's just to stay home and socially distance to help us get this under control and stay healthy. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Mr. DeLuca, please.
Mayor, I have no report, but I just wanted to, since I have the microphone, I just wanted to commend you on your leadership here during this pandemic. I sat in that chair for a lot of years and had my own disasters to deal with. This is by far something way beyond those, and I just want to applaud your work, your efforts in keeping the community informed, and all that you're doing. And I know that one of the most difficult parts is talking to the families. So thank you, and we're all behind you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Thank you. Mr. Dappis.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo Mr. DeLuca's comments, Mayor. Your leadership has been strong. It's been empathic, and everyone appreciates you, myself included, and we do whatever we can to support you during this very difficult time. And we appreciate the constant information that is coming out of Town Hall, and everyone on the ground appreciates it too. Even when it's bad news, it's better than no news. So thank you for that. I have two items, Mayor. One of them is good news for our small businesses in town. We were able to receive a critical clarification regarding non-essential retail from the governor's office earlier today. Non-essential retail that must be closed to the public during the state of emergency means that they can operate in other viable ways, such as through online sales and deliveries. That includes mail order, that includes curbside delivery, that includes customer curbside pickup. So long as the non-essential retail is closed to the public, as long as their doors are closed to the public, they can do those things. And as long as, with respect to curbside delivery and curbside pickup, there is no contact with customers, and social distancing and all proper mitigation measures such as masking are adhered to, there is no problem. So we want to make that clear to our small businesses. I've certainly shared that information with all of you, and I've shared it with our SID managers so that they can share it with our small businesses. My second item is just a continuation of our senior support efforts on the ground here in town. We have gone from 45 to 62 assistance requests that we've been able to meet. Most of those have to do with food delivery and shopping for our seniors. The longer term needs are referred to the Maplewood Human Services Director, Beverly Ashman, or to South Orange's social worker, Carol Berman. And I want to applaud our recreation department and our senior services folks who are doing a fabulous job of converting some of our previous programming online. So some of our more popular exercise classes are now available. We're working on putting some of our life learning classes online as well. Those are very popular and well received and very critical right now for our seniors during these times because they're stuck at home. I want to promote a healing arts group that is starting up. It's called Sing for Hope and includes some of our famous Broadway stars in town. It will be held on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and Mondays at 1 p.m. So we encourage people to tune into that. And as I reported last time, we are testing wellness calls to our seniors. We have contact lists, and of course, it's all voluntary, and people are welcome to opt out if they're not interested. But it is another opportunity to reach out and stay engaged. On a serious note, I want to send a message home, as you did earlier today, Mayor, that we are not out of this yet. While our hospital data shows that hospitalizations are a little bit down and we're possibly getting closer to flattening the curve, during his press conference this afternoon, the governor announced that the amount of deaths that we had in New Jersey today due to COVID-19, were the highest ever in a single day. So please, I encourage and I urge everyone out there to continue taking precautions. Please stay home. When you go outside, even for a walk, it doesn't hurt to wear the bandana or some face protection. And please, please, please do what you can to continue flattening this curve. We are not out of the woods just yet. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Dafis. First I just want to start off, we'll start with business, and I want to say that the Communications Committee met last week, myself, Mr. Dafis, as well as Mr. Malinowski. We met and we are starting to explore the next phase of our digital communications, which is inclusive of our website. We are going through an exercise where we're looking at the UI and seeing where there can be some enhancements under the current project, current vendor rather, and then also, exercising and talking with potential new vendors for the future of our website. We're also looking at our email communications. We know that especially during this pandemic that our email communications are so critical, and we appreciate those who have signed up for our email communications and those who read them and share them with others. We're just looking at, some of the communication we send related to events and situations, and also related to maybe when you first sign up for emails, you're relatively new to our community. So things such as maybe some type of welcome to Maplewood onboarding flow along those lines. So there's more to come on that. We'll continue to move forward digitally with these communications and going from there. I also want to recognize our census. I know we are maybe 1.7% behind South Orange, but I want to recognize some great efforts that have occurred recently. Mr. DeLuca came up with a brilliant idea, which is if you have finished your census, you could take a picture and you can paint it or color it and put it in your window. And when I go for an occasional run or walk my dog, I've seen a handful over in the blocks where I live, and I think it's great. So I'd like to encourage all residents to continue to respond to the census. We are trending above the U.S. We're trending above New Jersey. We're trending above Essex County, and we really want to trend above South Orange. So keep hogging your neighbors and moving forward with that. And then I also want to thank all of my colleagues for their efforts. It's a team effort. There's so many moving parts during this pandemic, and everyone has stepped up to address things either from a public safety perspective, our small businesses, food insecurities, working with our SID managers, and I thank you so much. And then also to our administrative and our staff, to Glenn, to Joe, to Sonia, to Liz, to Candace, Missy, Chief Weber, Chief Duvall, to Caesar, to Joe Kaloje, as well as to Paul Kidner. Everyone has done a phenomenal job of really helping us manage our township, under these unprecedented times. And we are, we have to manage the day-to-day of a township and run it. And as Ms. Adams said, there's some things that we can clarify, and we'll get that done. There's some things where there's some gray areas, and we can enhance our communications. We appreciate, that being pointed out, and we will do that and continue to do that. Obviously, be patient with us. We're trying to navigate the best we can under, so many executive orders, and righteously communicated in our own directives as well, all under one construct, so we can flatten this curve, and everyone can be safe and healthy. We're losing lives. We're losing lives right in our community, and it's tragic. These aren't just numbers. These are people. These are mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles that aren't coming home. And it's really sad. So I want to thank everyone for continuing to practice social distancing, to wear your mask or have your mask at all times. We can't force you to do it, but we really appreciate you and your families if you did that when you went for your bike rides or your runs or your walks. Because when you come into situations where you can't manage that social distancing, you do put yourself potentially at risk, and so having that mitigates that risk. So anyway, thank you for all you do, and that is my report. We'll now move on to agenda item number 13, our discussion items. Our first discussion item is regarding the calendar. Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. Ms. Fritzen mentioned it before. In the beginning of the year, when we set up our calendar, we scheduled the first meeting in June to be June 3rd because we had the primary on June 2nd. That primary has now been shifted to July 7th, which is another date of our township committee. So I think the question that we need to answer tonight is, do we want to switch back the June meeting from June 3rd to June 2nd? And do we want to do anything for the July 7th meeting? And we do have uncontested primaries, so maybe it's not any reason to change the July 7th meeting. If we're going to have it at town hall, though, we might conflict with the voting that occurs there, because my sense is that we're probably going to have to reconfigure some of that voting at town hall to spread people out outside just the lobby so that we don't have that congregation. And we would probably have to use some part of the meeting room for that voting. So it might make sense to shift our July meeting from July 7th to July 8th, and then go back to June 2nd on our June meeting.
May I make a suggestion also, considering the social distancing, maybe even going to the municipal court building?
Us?
Yeah.
For the meeting?
Yeah. Yes.
As opposed to just shifting it another night?
Right.
You have public safety scheduled for July 8th.
We can move that,
Okay.
but
But the public safety, that's not in the court, Nancy, that's over in the OEM building.
Yeah, no, it's not about location. It's about the conflict of the date. If we keep the primary, well, we're obviously not moving the primary. But we either move our location on the 7th or we move our meeting to the 8th, but then it conflicts with public safety's regular meeting.
I would prefer to move the dates. I don't like the idea of meeting on election day. That night. I think it's better for us to have our meeting the day after. So my proposal, and I don't know if Mr. DeLuca already made a motion, but my proposal would be to move the June meeting from Wednesday, June 3rd to Tuesday, June 2nd, and move the first July meeting from Tuesday the 7th to Wednesday the 8th. And the Public Safety Committee can find another date.
I would second it and just say that the July 8th meeting, just take Ms. Vivero's suggestion, we should do the July 8th meeting. Oh, the July 8th meeting would be that Wednesday, so we're okay, yeah. I will
Right.
second it.
Mr. Daffis, any discussion?
No, I would agree with that proposal.
Ms. Adams?
I think
All right, why don't we go ahead and make your formal motion, Mr. Limbrick, and then we'll call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move that we hold the first Maplewood Township Committee meeting in June on Tuesday, June 2nd, rather than the currently scheduled Wednesday, June 3rd, and the first Township Committee meeting in July on Wednesday, July 8th, as opposed to Tuesday, July 7th, to accommodate Election Day. Those meetings be held at Town Hall.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Adams,
yes.
Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We'll now move on to discussion item number 2. Mr. Daffis, summer activities.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I put down here is July 4th, the pool season and summer camps. I recognize that we're not going to make a decision on all of these items this evening. It would be a premature decision. We certainly need to get a better idea of when the state of emergency is going to lift and receive some guidance from the state about what that's going to look like before we make some of these decisions. But because residents have been asking, I think I thought it was prudent to start the discussion with all of you and to sort of see where we are, if any decisions have been made in subcommittee, to report about those, and to generally give our residents an idea of how we're assessing all of these activities. I want to report before we get into that we now know for sure, it's been confirmed, that Maplewood Stock is going to be on October 3rd and 4th. They booked the park for then. And Pride is going to be on September 13th, which is a Sunday, of course. So with that, I open up the discussion. We could start with July 4th, since that's the first one on the list.
I was just going to say, I think it's hard to make these decisions and so much is still in flux. I mean, one of the things we're also going to have to, barring any state directive, discuss is when we open up again, whether or not we want to impose standards on our businesses with regard to, for example, keeping a safe distance between patrons at a bar or a restaurant, or capacity. And I don't know if that is being discussed on a state level. Maybe some of you might know if those conversations are taking place to when and I know the governor's putting something broad out at the end of this week, but it's just something to keep in mind. So when Mr. Lembrick and I met with Maplewood Stock a couple times over the last few weeks, part of their issue and why they're moving it is fundraising has become exceedingly difficult. So they and both Mr. Lembrick and I encouraged them to try to find a later date because we think the community could really use Maplewood Stock this year at some point. But again, even that far out, we're not sure what people are going to feel like they can do when they go back out. What kind of fear they'll have, whether or not we can have people who aren't together sit next to each other. It's just there's still so much unknown. I feel like it might be premature to try to come to decisions. And as you said, Mr. Daffis, we're not going to probably come to those decisions tonight, but there's just so much as we, in my work and in this kind of thing that goes through your head and trying to make changes to everything we do in the short term and maybe through the end of the year. So that's just sort of where I'm at moment.
Mr. DeLuca, you want me to touch a little bit on the 4th of July? Happy to do that.
Sure. And the pool,
So-
and you're gonna talk about the pool, our plans for the pool too, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that, and not to kind of blend into discussion item number 4, but obviously, the 4th of July, there's expense that's associated, and also with the pool. So we had a conversation about the 4th of July because this year, as we've talked about previously, or earlier in the year, that, that we would be incurring the expense for the 4th of July. We had a thoughtful discussion, and one of the things we said is that, we really can't have the type of 4th of July that we've had, historically, for many reasons that some have already just been recently stated. But, we thought about the possibility of just doing fireworks and fireworks themselves for a short period of time, leveraging the footprint that we have, which is the North Field, the South Field, Rippleton Square, by the middle school, the front lawn of Town Hall, Donnell Road, Oakview, all the roads around, but under the construct of obviously, strict social distancing. So, that is something that we vetted through and said it could be a possibility. That decision will not be made tonight, but we wanted to start to, think about what could possibly be done. I think when you look at Maplewood Woodstock, pushing out to October, and, we're very pleased that they're going to have that event. I think, that's a confined or, very tighter, experience, where we have a much broader footprint and could theoretically have the ability to have a fireworks show, but then also coupled with social distancing, and that would be it. So no one's made that decision either way yet. We do have some time before we have to make that decision, but not a lot of time, but not necessarily to be made tonight. But we do want to try within reason to provide our community with with some normality, if you will, things that we are used to doing and celebrating the anniversary of our country. So that's kind of the conversation that came out of that committee meeting. And Mr. DeLuca, if I missed anything, please fill that in.
May, I think you were going to talk about the pool and what our outlook is and what we're trying to do, start a startup and stuff.
Yep. So yeah, I will go ahead and jump to the pool as well. So there are a lot of people that I think there's multiple opinions about the pool. But we do believe that at some point the governor is going to likely come out with some direction regarding opening up, New Jersey beaches and shore towns, and people are going to go to the beach, and people are going to try to enjoy their summer the best they can, under social distancing, and hopefully being thoughtful of others. And we believe that there is a possibility that our residents can also enjoy, the amenities of our pool as well. From a financial perspective, regardless if we open or not, we're going to incur over $300,000 expense just because it's a fixed cost for our pool. And just talking with Ms. Mancuso and understanding the logistics of what needs to get done to open the pool, and also taking into consideration historically what we've done with the pool, which is, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've opened it up on Memorial Day weekend and then kind of ramped up to a full opening, toward the end of June. So the thoughts that we have right now is actually deferring and pushing the opening to June 20th, which is Saturday, like kind of the first day of summer, and hopefully have some direction at that time also, obviously from Trenton and other places, so that we can still have our pool and have that attribute for our residents, gradually ramping up. But we are still strongly considering opening the pool for a truncated season. But the good news is, though, even though it's truncated, is that traditionally, we usually open the pool around this time anyway. So it would really be not as much truncated as one would believe. But that is the thoughts that have been put into place in terms of these two activities so that we can, as we continue to do what we're doing today, the fruits of our labor will be having a 4th of July and having.
And Mayor, the decision on the pool, we would have to do a go or no go decision by May 19th, which is our second May meeting. That would give enough time for the department director to hire the staff that's needed for the pool. On the 4th of July, we can go a little further. The only thing that we can work with Ms. Viveros offline. The only thing we have to do is we have to get some bids on fireworks. That's going to take a little bit of time, and we can figure out the logistics of that if we can go out now and have something in the contract that allows us to cancel for this. If we can't ensure there's social distancing or whatever. So we still have a little time, but it is going to start to get tight as we get into the next month.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. And again, that the point is that we didn't make any knee-jerk decisions as we started to move toward where we are today with COVID-19. We also don't want to make any knee-jerk decisions about some activities which we can potentially move forward with, as hopefully we get to this phase approach of drawing back some of the restrictions that we have now as a society. But Mr. DeLuca is very much accurate by saying that there is a finite point when we have to make decisions, either a no-go or go with the 4th of July and with the pool. But as Mr. Dappa said, we should start having this conversation and let the public know that we're working thoughtfully to try to find a way to have fireworks and have a pool season.
Mr. DeLuca and Mayor, thank you both. So since May 17th seems to be the drop dead decision date for the pool because of staffing issues and the lead time that Ms. Mancuso would need, should we just deem May 17th the drop dead decision date for July 4th as well? So we can create some sense of expectation to the community when we're coming to a decision and what we're going to be doing?
Well, it is my opinion, and we can talk about it collectively. I would prefer not to. I mean, there could be a scenario where we don't have a pool season, but we were able to get the 4th of July up and going. It really comes down to the bidding process for the fireworks and what that entails. But there's really, I guess 3 or 4 scenarios here, and one is no pool and no 4th of July, or no fireworks rather, or pool and fireworks, or a combination of one of those two, which is obviously would be, no pool but fireworks. So if we could hold off, being thoughtful about what we're trying to do and say maybe that first meeting in June, make that decision, that gives us a couple more weeks to make sure we've exhausted all the possibilities.
And Mayor, I'll start to solicit quotes for the fireworks. We might get some good competitive pricing that wouldn't require us to go out to bid. So it might be a better scenario than we think in terms of that. So I'll work on that.
The only thing I would ask is if you work with Mr. Desiderio to make sure we have an exit clause in whatever we're asking for, because
absolutely,
we're flying in the dark a little bit. One thing about dates is the governor has canceled school through May 17th. And so he's going to, in that week, he's going to make some major announcements. And I think he's also going to have to make an announcement regarding the shore towns for Memorial Day weekend. So that's probably the sweet spot that week. And so it's consistent with what we're talking about too. So I think if we stick with the May 19th Township Committee meeting to make a decision, and then on the pool, and then we maybe shoot for that first weekend, that first meeting in June for the 4th of July, I think that would give us time to get his input, the governor's input, to see what else is happening around and to make some informed decisions.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want to create any deadlines for us that cause us to have to make decisions before necessary, particularly if, we're going to get information in the meantime that might allow us to make more informed and better decisions. So yeah, I don't necessarily want to impose any artificial deadlines, but it is good that we're starting to give thought to what the actual deadlines are when we're going to have to make sort of go, no go decision.
Ms. Viveros, do you have any information from Ms. Mancuso about the summer camps?
Tony, you're muted.
I did. There you go. We did discuss that also with regard to summer camps. So camps start after the school is over, so that's late June. And at this point, we again are not
Sonia, you're on mute.
We're not going to make. Can you hear me now? Okay. We're not making any decisions about any closure or postponing the opening of summer camp because it would happen after school. And given the trajectory, if there's a slow return to the new normal, it would provide obviously childcare for those parents returning to work or parents needing a break from their children, if you will. There are people that have already purchased camp weeks, if you will, because you can purchase the week by week. So I don't think it's a decision, again, we're going to make right now about summer camps. We are operating in the assumption that there would be, they would still be opening at the end of June.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Daphnis.
Can I add one other
Go ahead,
event
Mr.
that we ought to talk about, and that is the Memorial Day Parade, which I think is time sensitive. And my recommendation would be not to have it because the whole notion of marching is we have people close together. I don't think we would have the band. The VFW members are in a vulnerable population there, and I think that in the abundance of caution, we ought to cancel the Memorial Day Parade.
I agree with Mr. DeLuca.
Agreed. Do we need to make a motion to cancel the parade?
I would move that for 2020, we cancel the Memorial Day Parade due to the COVID-19.
I second
I would
it.
second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Mayor, it's Liz. That would be canceling the parade and the ceremonies at the front lawn of Town Hall, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daphnis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We'll now move on, and thank you, Mr. Daphnis. We'll now move
I'm
on.
sorry. I'm sorry, Mayor. If I may, I'd like to add to the pool discussion.
Please, Mr. Kalojian.
So while we certainly recognize that by May 19th, we're going to make a decision, and a lot of that decision-making process is going to be out of our hands and reliant upon the state, I think what would be helpful to our residents right now is we're getting an extraordinary amount of calls about people who are inquiring whether or not we're going to be opening the pool. And so because our township has been cutting edge in terms of protecting people's safety, while we're not asking the governing body to make a decision tonight. I think it would be important if the public knew that it is the desire of the township committee to open the pool this summer, so that we can allay some of the fears that people have about calling, but not necessarily wanting to sign up for the pool because they don't know if there's going to be a pool. So I think if we can at least take a straw poll of the committee members and see if we have a commitment to open the pool this summer, recognizing that we're not making any permanent decision, I think that would go a long way in terms of what we're trying to do with registration.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje. I think I'm happy to have that kind of, I'm in, I'm out situation. I'll speak for myself. I'm hoping that we have a pool season. I'm hoping that we can get back to some type of, I hate to use the word normal, but normal, for our community, for our youth, and for our families this summer. And obviously do it in a way that we've never done it before, which is thoughtfully think of others when you're at the facility. But I would hope, and I do hope, that we have a pool season.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with that, and I also I'd just like to confirm with Mr. Kaloje that it would certainly be my expectation as a township committee member and as a pool member that people who do register for the pool season, if the pool season is, let's not into if there's partial season right now. If the pool season has to be canceled, regretfully, everyone will be receiving a refund of their membership fee.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Right. So no one would think that if they register that if pool season is canceled, they're going to lose their money. And I just wanted to confirm that. And and I agree with the mayor that I am hopeful that we can have a season. Although obviously the next few weeks, both in terms of how things develop with COVID-19 and also the guidance we get from Trenton and elsewhere, will probably inform whether that's possible, and we'll make a responsible decision when that decision has to be made.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would support the opening of the pool. I think that one of the things that will be helpful and actually necessary for our decision on May 19th is to have an operational plan from the Department of Community Service Director as to how we are going to protect the patrons of the pool, how they can protect themselves. So, for example, are we going to require masks as people come in and out of the pool, out of the building, out of the facility? In that little hallway there, it's pretty tight.
Right.
What precautions, what personal protection are we going to have for employees who are checking people in? Do you have to wear a mask if you're lined up for food? Do you even line up for food, or do you order it and it gets dropped off, at a drop-off table? So I think those are the things that we're going to want to hear, but I also think those are the things that our pool members are going to want to know, that we've thought through and that we are putting in place some safeguards to make this a safe facility.
And just as a segue to that, Ms. Mancuso's already working with her association on what that plan would look like. So we're working on that. Additionally, and just to add to that, the library is also working on that. And we're going to have our typical department head meeting tomorrow morning, and the library is proposing to purchase the glass separators, if you will, just like they're using at the supermarket. So we're all thinking about, yes, once this comes into a new normal, how to integrate this social distancing, continuing any mitigation. So all departments will be doing that moving forward, whether it's the pool, it's the library, it's us in town hall, the court, things like that. I know the court's got glass, but I'm saying people line up in that hallway too. So we have to think about how that's going to change going forward. So yes, that will be the next function of each department to look forward to. And I'll make sure to get that to everybody in the next couple weeks or so.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what I was talking about before. We're going to have to think of this not just on township facilities, but in businesses. But, everything is so up in the air and it changes weekly. So we just have to be mindful of all of that and talk about things before. And I was talking with Len before about the farmers market and working on, and Rutgers has put out guidance on that, on how to run the farmers markets. They're an essential business and they can open, but we have to do the same thing. So I'd be in favor of opening the pool. We may have to, we'd have to consider not letting people sit so close together either. So there's a lot to think about. So I think it's just a conversation that has to keep happening as we progress through COVID and as things change week to week. So, but I'd be in favor of opening the pool if we can.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay, Mr. Dappis, did you want to make any comments about it? Good.
I'm in line with everything that's been said. If we can do it, let's do it. But it's got to be appropriate and it's got to be responsible.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to discussion item number 3. Mr. DeLuca has put a item on here, a letter to support HR 6467.
Thank you. So there's a lot of discussion in Washington about providing financial assistance to state and local governments. The bill that was passed in the Senate today does not include that. There was an effort to try to get that in there, and it was rejected. There was a commitment both from the White House and from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, that there will be another bill, and that will include money for state and local governments. In the first bill, in one of the first bills of the financial assistance, they provided some money to local governments with populations of 500,000 and above. So those were the largest cities. And there's an effort clearly in New Jersey, no city is 500,000 and above. So I think there's an effort both by the League of Municipalities and by the New Jersey Conference of Mayors to get our Congress people to sign on to HR 6467. So far, Malinowski, Gottheimer, Sherrill, Series, Van Drew, and Watson Coleman have signed on. Congressman Payne has not signed on yet. And there's a few others, Andy Kim and Pascal. So I think it would be in order for us to pass a resolution asking our congressman to, formally asking him to sign on to this or similar bills that would provide funding for smaller sized municipalities, and also just write a letter of support for this.
Vic, do you know?
I agree.
If he just hasn't done it yet, or if he has some sort of opposition?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I would want the letter to go for sure.
Absolutely.
So I would move that we pass a motion in support of funding local governments with populations like ours, and that we look at HR 6467 as a vehicle to do that.
Second. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Dappis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick, Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Okay, we are now on our 4th discussion item, which is our Finance Committee report. So Mr. DeLuca will tee this off.
Thank you, Mayor. So our Finance Committee met on the 17th of April, and we talked about a number of things: our operating budget, the budget process, the revenue and expenditures, property tax, cash flow, Um, so as we've discussed in the past, we have to introduce our budget next month and then give a adoption of the budget in June. We are set to do that. We've come to an agreement on what our draft budget is, and we'll introduce it appropriately at those dates. We still have to have a balanced budget. It's required by the state. If we end up with an imbalanced budget at the end of the year, then that imbalance has to be taken care of in the following year. We have a lot of unknowns about our revenue figures. We've looked at the revenue figures. A significant portion of our budget is received from program and service fees, rentals, interest, court fines, licenses, construction-related fees, and those are all down. Those are down significantly. And that doesn't even deal with the pool. We're just talking about the operating budget. Based on the information that we've looked at, we think that there'll be roughly about $1.5 million short. That's something that we are going to have to continue to look at as we go through the course of the year. Now, some of that will be offset by expenses that we will not incur. So, for example, some of our fees that we bring in for rental of our facilities, we have to hire attendants. So we're not hiring attendants because we're not doing that. So there's some reduction there. It's not significant though. We did look at the capital budget. There was really not much of a savings to do anything there. And then, of course, we've looked and even today there was a story out about Senator Sweeney suggesting furloughing state and local employees. We looked at that as is that something we should be talking about? We want to make sure that we continue to provide services to our residents. This now's not the time to be talking about reducing police or firefighters, our DPW people who are out there every day, our health department people, our people who are working behind the scenes to make everything run. So we don't think that we should be thinking about any layoffs or furloughs at this time. We will take a look at that as we go along. We'll see what the state comes up with. But we do feel that it would be inconsistent for us as a township to reduce staff salaries at a time when we're advocating for the protection of employees and their paychecks in the private sector. If our goal is to keep people employed and keep our services ongoing and being provided to our residents, then we're going to have to be able to pay our employees. But we will. I mean, there comes a point when we just don't have the revenue that we're expecting. And this is why it's so very important to get that congressional bill through and get some of that support from the federal government, similarly to what they're doing for the private sector. If we can hold off and really work to get that money from the feds, then that will enable us to have a balanced budget. Regarding property taxes, there's a state statute. It's 54:4-66A, which is very clear that taxes have to be paid in 4 installments: February 1st, May 1st, August 1st, and November 1st. And if it's unpaid, then they become delinquent. We do not have at the local level the ability to change that May 1st installment date. As I know, we've been getting calls. At this point, we have not received any information from the state that the May 1st date will not be adhered to. In fact, we've heard the opposite. We've heard that we should expect taxpayers to pay their second installment on May 1st. About 60% of our taxes come from banks through escrow accounts that the people who have mortgages paid to the banks. And about 40% are paid directly by property owners. We have a very low level of delinquent accounts. We have about 7,400 accounts, and by far most pay. So we are looking at the May 1st date as the date the second installment is due. There is a 10-day grace period, so it goes through the 10th of May, and that's without incurring any interest or penalty. We are discussing as we go along what we might be able to do to help mitigate any kind of difficulties people have, but it will not be for the May 1st date. We'll have to take a look at that. We have some more discussions. Essentially, the money that we get primarily from property tax. And if we don't collect the property tax, then we can't pay our bills. And we have bills coming out in the beginning of May, or at the end of May rather, for pension payments, payments to school, payments to the county. $15.5 million we have to pay out in May, the end of April and the beginning of May. So we need to be able to raise that money and to be able to meet our requirements, both to keep our staff and our services going forward, and also meet our financial obligations. Having said all that, we're very aware that rents are not being paid. Property owners are having difficult times. They have lost their jobs. We are going to continue to look at this. We're going to continue to work with the state to see if they are providing any kind of any kind of programs or support that we can be able to work out something for subsequent payments. But the May 1st payment is going to be due, and we will continue to look at this after that May 1st payment. And that's the report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. I just want to add that it was a lengthy meeting, and we really went through a lot of scenarios, cash flow analysis. We looked at various trends from, a normalized year versus, COVID pandemic year looks like on the revenue side. We looked at expenses, we looked at capital expenses, and we're very thoughtful about what we could potentially cut, knowing that would help on the down payment, and there really wasn't much there. Also, again, as we look at the budget, in the end, it's more than likely we'll have an unbalanced budget, but there's an unknown right now. I mean, everything's an unknown. So, we're going to leverage the revenue figures, that we've established. But we'll be thoughtful about our expenses as we continue to move forward. Mr. DeLuca is 100% right that, we are committed to our, to running this government in this town. And that means we're committed to the people that are doing the jobs, in that capacity. And as long as we can do that, we will do that. And there are some hefty bills coming up. The $15.5 million, those are real bills that are coming our way with the big three that Mr. DeLuca already mentioned. And we have to meet those requirements. We waited, we called, we've been looking, we've been researching, but there's no relief from Trenton saying, hey, we're going to, defer your payment from May 1st. But we're going to be thoughtful as people, do what they can. One of the things that we'll be passing tonight is a resolution is partial payments for property taxes. And that's something that we traditionally just don't do. So, we're trying to find little ways that we can help without jeopardizing or compromising, our cash flow and our ability to run our township. Thank you.
I have a question. Did the Finance Committee discuss, I understand, and I'm not looking for furloughing or any employees, but was any discussion given to the increases, whether they're merit increases that we've discussed during the budget process, or position increases, or the general 2% increase that employees get, and giving ourselves some relief with regard to that? while they're still keeping their jobs and getting the salaries they had last year. Was that discussed at all?
Yes. One of the things that we looked at was, that we want to make sure that we have a high morale and a balance, amongst our team, our staff. Some have contractual raises and some do not. So we did look at that, and we want to keep, a even and fair environment and morale for our township staff.
And with regard to the contractual agreements, these were negotiated with our various bargaining units, and we did not discuss going back and opening up those agreements.
Right, but they are, the staff that's not under contractual agreements, we have the ability to hold off on merit increases or 2% raises that are typical. If it's going to be, we're talking about either saving jobs or maintaining increases.
I think the so the increase, and Ms. Viveros can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've already approved the merit increases in a previous township committee meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. We have. And additionally, I am pretty set on all but maybe one with regard to the contractual with contracts. I've just been working on the back end on MOAs and contract language. So those increases are we've negotiated essentially. So those were set.
So the one thing, Ms. Adams, is I think if we were to do, I think the difference between not giving the 2% to non-contractual employees, and it's a pretty small number, but as opposed to doing furloughs, is with a furlough, you spread it over many people. If you're just not doing the 2% increase, it's just selecting people who, because of the sort of the calendar they're not going to get included. So I think our feeling was to move ahead with that. If we have to go furloughs, to be strategic in doing the furloughs and spread the pain across all departments and do it that way.
Right.
Else?
There's one thing I did forget to mention about the sewer fee. We typically send the sewer fee out, the bill out, and we usually ask for a payment on June 1st. We are pushing the payment back to June 30th. So the sewer fee bills will go out by mid-May, and then we will push it back by 2 weeks, the payment to be, instead of June 15th, it'll be June 30th. So it gives people a little extra time to cover that bill. That we have the ability to do, to move those dates. So we are recommending that.
Yeah. And thank you for adding that in, Mr. DeLuca, because that was the big difference. We realized we could control that date where we can't control the property tax.
Correct.
Looked at both and hope we could do both, honestly. I may be so frank and honest about that, but we knew we couldn't. But, at this point, we're going to keep looking at this. We have more discussions to happen as people start to pay their property taxes. I mentioned before, it's a resolution on for tonight where we're doing partial payments. We've already waived the EFT fee, and we'll be looking at, other things along those lines as we start to see payments come in. And obviously we need to meet our responsibilities to the school district, which is every month. We pay, I think it's $6 million or $5.5 million every month. And then we have a pretty significant chunk, that quarterly payment that Essex County is expecting as well. Does anyone else have any additional comments regarding the Finance Committee report? Okay. Okay, we're now move on to
Mayor, can I just
yes.
check something with Mr. Cologe? Do we
Sure.
need to pass any kind of a motion to, with the sewer tax to make it a June 30th payment?
We will prepare a resolution to formally take care of that at the first meeting in May.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Okay, let's move on our agenda here. We're at item number 14, and I'm going to let Mr. Limbrick, he's ready now to go. We have a few tweaks here on number 14. So
Yep.
Can we get your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move adoption of items 2 through 11 on the consent agenda with the clarification made by Mr. Davis earlier on number 3, resolution 97-20, that those renovations are for the Civic House and not the DPW building.
Is there a second? Awesome. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
And
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I'd now like to move separately the adoption of resolution number 71-20, a resolution rejecting bids for ADA improvement at various locations. And I understand that after we have a second, assuming we have a second, consistent with Mr. Desiderio's advice, we should open that up for a hearing or potential comment from the public.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
No, please, Mayor, no. So we should ask Mr. Walls if he's heard from anyone with regard to that. Any objectors?
Yep, my apologies. Yes, Mr. Walls.
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio, for that clarification. My apologies. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now on agenda item number 15, public comment on any subject matter. Mr. Walls, do we have any comments from the public?
No, Mayor, you have no public comment.
Okay, before I close public comment, I'd actually like to give the floor, if she's there, to Ms. Davenport for a minute or two. Again, I think she's been doing a phenomenal job, she and her team, and I'd like to give her an opportunity to speak on anything that we want to let the public know regarding our current state with COVID-19.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank you very much, Mayor. I want to thank everyone on the Township Committee for all your support for the Public Health Division and all of the work that we are doing. As you will see with the Mayor's nightly updates, we are up to 215 cases and 15 deaths in Maplewood. This is significant and a great burden that we are bearing at the Public Health Division, where we are contacting all of the families and residents. We are contact tracing. We are crying and grieving with them on the phone, and we are giving them and emphasizing information, and they're understanding how important this is to stay at home and follow public health recommendations. I ask the Township Committee to please reinforce this with everyone that you have contact with, that we are in a public health emergency, one of the biggest crises that we will ever see in our lifetime. Everything is uncertain, and I would ask that you advise the Public Health Division, particularly myself, and I can rally it up to the State Health Department on advice and guidance for opening up all of these events like the pool, the farmers market, the parades, all of this. I understand how important these things are for the township, but there is a public health emergency and crisis, and we have to do this carefully. to protect the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport, and thank you again to you and your entire team for the work you're doing every day, every hour, it seems like, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and as Ms. Davenport mentioned, because I was unable to get out the email tonight before this meeting, we've had 8 more cases, bringing us to 215, and we've had our 15th fatality, unfortunately, in our town, of a person of the age of 50 years. So our condolences go to that family. I spoke with the significant other of that person, and they're dealing with it as well as they can. So our prayers and thoughts are with them and all the other families, that are currently grieving, loss of family members. So, okay, we are at the last part of our agenda for tonight. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Aye.